But their fourth successive defeat came as a severe blow which party leaders were at a loss to explain.
I confess at once that I am surprised that there's not an overall Labour majority. I've still not worked out why that is. We won some seats I didn't think we'd win. We lost some seats I didn't dream we'd lose. And I can't pretend I can tell you this minute why that happened.
Even after ditching unpopular policies such as unilateralism, they still only put on 4%. Advocates of proportional representation inside the party will question whether Labour can ever again win under the first-past-the-post system, particularly with boundary changes due before the next election. The Liberal Democrats, whose targeting of seats failed to produce significant results, now see the debate inside the Labour Party as the key to opposition politics.
I think there will be a battle within the Labour Party between those who know that you can't turn it into some kind of European Social Democratic Party unless you embrace real constitutional reform.
Do you think Labour can ever win another election under our present system?
It looks to me as though they can't.
But the projected majority of 17 for the Tories gives them a clear run now for a full parliament, and the green light for gradual cuts in income tax, further privatisation of coal and rail services, and pressing ahead with more trust hospitals in the NHS.
Well, let's start to try to put the results in context. With us in the studio now is Professor Tony King of Essex University. Tony, I know a long night for you, for most people, but let's try to explain what may have happened. Roy Hattersley clearly can't understand what's caused this lack of swing to Labour, only an average 2% swing. How bad is it for Labour, first of all?
I think it's terribly bad, and I think the explanation is probably fairly straightforward and has nothing to do with the campaign we've just witnessed. The fact is that the Labour Party has been declining in electoral terms over a considerable number of years. They've had 4 leaders in the last 20 years, so changing their leader doesn't seem to help very much. And they've changed their policies very radically since the 1987 election. I think the problem is that from the late 60s until the mid-80s, the Labour Party was going through a period when it was obvious it was terribly closely tied to the trade unions, when it was adopting more and more left-wing policies, when it was associated with what the Sun called the loony left, when Labour in power was marked by large numbers of industrial disputes, high inflation and so on. And I think the problem for Labour is that those memories have bitten deep and have been passed on from one generation to another. There are just an awful lot of people out there who at bottom are mistrustful of, even frightened of, the possibility of a Labour government.
If it's bad for Labour, it must also surely be judged a flop for Mr Ashdown and the Lib Dems, isn't it?
Absolutely. I thought that the public response to the negativism of the campaigns of both the Conservative and the Labour parties would be to Mr Ashdown's advantage, and it was in the opinion polls. But I think that when it came to the ballot box, the Conservatives' insistence that a vote for the Liberal Democrats was going to be a vote to let a Labour government in seems to have had some effect.
Tony King, we'll talk to you again later, but for the moment, thank you very much indeed. And with the time at 6:30 now, we're going to take a break as we catch up with the latest weather picture from Suzanne Charlton. Good morning, Suzanne.
Good morning. Probably a few bleary eyes first thing this morning. Let's show you what the weather's happening out there, outside the window. On the rainfall radar, we can see there has been some rain around overnight, noticeably up over Scotland. A little finger of it just recently moved through the Belfast region as well. So cloudy skies first thing this morning and for virtually all of today too, mainly in the north of Scotland and down this western area as well, bringing the odd spot of rain and drizzle every now and again. Now, not everywhere completely cloudy, a few bright spells around the Moray Firth, for example, parts of southeastern Scotland as well, but there will be lots of low cloud drifting up through the Irish Sea area, bringing some mist and fog there. A slightly different start to yesterday of the bulk of England and Wales, more in the way of hazy sunshine rather than the bright blue skies of yesterday, but not as misty first thing. Not a lot changing. We'll see more in the way of progressive rain moving in to the west later today. Temperatures very similar to yesterday's, so it'll feel pleasant again over much of the country. In fact, positively warm over England and Wales. Temperatures as high as 19 once again. That's it from me.
Many thanks, Suzanne. Right, let's catch up with the latest news now. The Conservatives have won the general election, their 4th in a row. With about 30 seats still undeclared, it seems that John Major will have a Commons majority of 17. Of the 618 declared so far, the Tories have 321, a loss of 35 seats. Labour have 269, a gain of 39. And the Liberal Democrats have 16, a net loss of 1. The threat of a rout at nationalist hands in Scotland didn't happen. but the Conservatives did take some serious knocks. Party Chairman Chris Patten lost his seat in Bath. A handful of ministers, including Linda Chalker, also failed to get back. Rory Keflin-Jones reports.
24,000.
It was Essex Man who gave the first hint that this was not to be Labour's night. David Amos's Basildon seat was the first of Labour's targets to declare, and when he managed to hold it for the Tories with comfort, Conservative hopes soared. As the night progressed, it became clear that while Labour was winning some of its easier targets, like Hyndburn in Lancashire, far too many were eluding them as the Conservative vote held up remarkably well. Meanwhile, Liberal Democrat hopes were fading as they failed to prize seats like Portsmouth South from the Tories' grasp.
30,908.
By 2 a.m, Neil Kinnock, with a record majority in his South Wales seat, wasn't yet ready to concede defeat.
So the battle is not yet over, and it is a battle.
But his hopes of becoming Prime Minister or even depriving the Tories of their majority were fading fast. As John Major arrived to hear of his thumping majority in Huntingdon, his assessment was characteristically understated.
The evening is not yet concluded, but I believe when it is concluded, it will have a satisfactory result.
North of the border, expectations of a Tory disaster were being confounded. The Scottish Secretary, Ian Lang, beat off the nationalist challenge in his Galloway constituency, and the Conservative vote was increasing. There were some setbacks for the Tories, most notably Chris Patten's loss at Bath to the Liberal Democrats. The task of running the national campaign while fighting for a marginal had proved too much. Other casualties included the Foreign Office Minister Linda Chalker, the Energy Minister Colin Moynihan, and two Treasury Ministers, Francis Maude and John Maples. As Neil Kinnock arrived at his London party headquarters an hour ago, he knew he'd been defeated. In an emotional speech to party workers, he pledged that Labour would work to win in the future.
For the sake of our country, we will prevail.
Just a mile away at Conservative Central Office, John Major was celebrating with the campaign team which had faced so much criticism.
We've won tonight a magnificent victory.
The man who'd always expressed quiet confidence in victory had been vindicated, and the Conservatives were back in power.
Well, for reaction from the financial markets, we join Fiona Foster.
Good morning. Time for a look at the quick data board, see how the markets are moving. We'll start with the pound, which, as you might imagine, has been very cheered by news of the Conservative victory overnight. Against the Deutsche market, it's trading at 288.13. That's up around 2.5 pfennigs. Against the dollar, it's at 177.34. That's up around 2.5 cents. The dollar, in fact, has been losing ground all night in the Far East. Moving on to the stock exchanges, the Hang Seng in Hong Kong is perhaps the most interesting one for us. It's standing at 4,917. That's up around 190 points. That's partly off the back of the dramatic rise in the Nikkei after this week's spectacular falls. That's now trading at 17,547. That's up over 900 points. But it's also been closely monitoring the general election campaign over here because of Hong Kong's close connections with the UK, obviously heartened by that result. The big one for us, of course, is the FT100. The London Stock Exchange will be opening half an hour early today at 7:30. It closed up 43 points last night. Some in the city say it could fly when it opens this morning. The FTSE might open up 150 points. We'll see. We'll be back here with that news as it happens. Now back to the studio and Nick.
Fiona, thank you very much indeed. Well, Neil Kinnock returned to Labour Party headquarters in Walworth Road in South London about an hour ago, where with Glenys Kinnock at his side, he made a defiant speech and spoke of his dismay and sorrow at Labour's failure.
We fought this general election of 1992 positively and with dignity. We told the truth about the economy, about the health service, about the condition of the education system, about the spread of poverty in our country. And we offered practical alternatives to failure, to injustice, and to the erosion of the people's services. Now the Conservatives will continue with the decline. They will not take the action necessary to build a productive base or to distribute income fairly, and they will go on with the policies which fragment and weaken the health and education services and centralize the power of the state. Science and the arts will be neglected. The action necessary to safeguard the environment, to conserve energy, and to improve transport will not be taken. Families will continue to suffer the crisis in housing. There will be no effective action to secure the full equality of women. There will be no changes to strengthen individual rights or to change the Constitution to reflect the widespread desire for reform. Above all, with this Conservative government, unemployment will continue to rise. For all these and so many other reasons, it's essential that the Labour Party retains the vitality and the unity which we've demonstrated in recent years and manifested so well during this general election campaign. And we will maintain that vitality and that unity. We are and we will remain the only party capable of offering an alternative government. At local and at national level, we have people of great abilities and a strong sense of service to their community and to their country. And only the Labour Party has built into its very purpose the commitment to preparing our country for the challenges and realities of the future, instead of leaving that future to chance. We will continue, therefore, to appeal to the breadth of the nation, to appeal to its best qualities of generosity and creativity, and to its desire to build economic success and to build fair opportunities.
Neil Kinnock conceding defeat in the general election from Labour Party headquarters. Joining us now from Westminster are two political editors. They are Robin Oakley on the left, the political editor of The Times, and Alastair Campbell, the political editor of the Daily Mirror. Alastair, let's start with you. To what would you attribute this fairly crushing defeat for Labour? Now, I wonder, Robin Oakley and Alastair Campbell, can you hear me? I think evidently not. We'll try to return to Westminster in just a moment. Let me, just in the meantime, ask Professor Tony King, who's still with us in the studio. A moment ago, Tony, we didn't just examine what happened in Scotland. An unusual result there. The swing was to the Conservatives by, what, about 3%. What do you think happened in Scotland?
Well, I think one has to allow for the possibility that John Major's going up there towards the end of the campaign and saying, in the really rather modest way he did, that of course if the Scots wanted their independence they could have it. No English army was going to cross the border and try to put the Scots down, but that he thought that that would diminish both England and Wales and Scotland. And I suspect that that argument had some weight. In addition, probably Scots were as moved as people in England and Wales were by the fear of the possibility of a Labour government that I referred to earlier on.
The Scots Secretary, Ian Lang, is saying that we're in business again. Do you think that that's an overstatement of the Conservative cause north of the border now?
Well, they certainly haven't gone out of business. To have held Ayr, to have held Galloway, Ian Lang's own constituency, to have held Stirling, to have gained Aberdeen South, that's a pretty impressive performance for a party that people were largely writing off and that was being written off in the opinion polls.
A defeat for the SNP. They've lost their deputy leader, Jim Sillars, in Govan. What are the implications of this for the whole devolution debate, do you think?
Well, we heard Alex Salmond a moment ago say something that could be potentially very significant. He claims that the people of Scotland want at least devolution, if not independence, and that many of them voted for the Labour Party in the belief that Labour could win power in Westminster and then give Scotland what so many people in Scotland desire. Now, Alex Salmond's claim is that now that it's clear to the Scottish people that Labour just can't deliver on that promise, that there will be a very sharp swing towards the SNP and an even more insistent demand for